gear items to discuss. My trekking poles. I went with these Black Diamond trekking poles. The only issues that I had with them, which everybody had at one point or another, was one of my tips came off. So easy enough to replace. Jim was able to get replacement tips and replace it. The only other thing that happened was these had a fabric cover over the webbing and with foam inside. And what happened was fabric started to fray and just rip. And then it had all this foam and stuff hanging out. So what I ended up doing was I just ended up cutting the foam and the fabric off of them and just using the webbing. But they were great. I will tell you, these poles saved my life many, many times, over and over again. These trekking poles were one of those items. This might be the one piece of gear that I can't say enough about. My poles were incredible. So these are a piece of gear that I feel are an investment. I think about coming down those steep rock faces and how these basically were everything when I was planting in and going downhill. These were critical. This is a critical piece of gear. Don't overlook it. Don't cheap out on it. Get good poles. They will make a huge difference. The other piece of gear that I haven't talked about was my shoes. I went through many pairs of shoes. I have yet to figure out how many exactly, but I will say I went with the Ultra Olympus 5. By the end of the through hike, I think everyone in my family was wearing Ultra Olympus 5. I started out in the Ultra Olympus 5 waterproof Gore-Tex boot. Because of the cold weather, because of inclement weather, I wanted the water protection to keep me warm and dry, and they were fantastic. I used to hike in the Olympus 4, so when the weather started to warm up, I switched back to the Olympus 4. I started to have issues with my shins with those, and I think it's because I had been hiking for so many miles in the 5s. The 4s just weren't working for me anymore. So I quickly found out that Ultra Olympus 5 comes in a non-waterproof Oxford. So I was happy to switch to these. The issues I had with these shoes, so first of all, they run small. So if you take a 7, you may need an 8. No big deal. Just make sure you try them on. Don't assume that they're gonna fit you. You shouldn't do that with any shoe, really. But don't assume that they're going to fit you the way all your other shoes fit you. So try them on, make sure that they're comfortable. They will stretch and give a little bit. But you need to make sure your length is good. The issues I had with these shoes are, when I first got them, I had a lot of blisters because a lot of foam in the heel and around your ankle. But once those initial blisters healed, which took a while, I was fine. This has a compound called Vibram Mega Grip, which is amazing when it comes to hiking shoes, wet traction, rocky surfaces. These have better traction for me and other people I'd heard as well that wore these and the Hoka Speed Goats. These have much better traction. It's not perfect. It's not like you have suction cups on your shoes. But the traction on these was much better than the Hoka Speed Goat, even though those also have Vibram Mega Grip on their outsole. The problem with these is these treads here would start to delaminate. Not the end of the world. You can super glue them back down. But it was something that I noticed happened on every pair of shoes. And this pair of shoes only had 105 miles on them, and you can see they're already starting to delaminate. The other thing to keep in mind is I don't believe these shoes are meant for the extreme beating that they take day in and day out on the Appalachian Trail. The only other thing that happened with these bad boys was the sidewall blew out. This is the second pair of shoes it happened to in 100 miles. the fabric completely tore away from the sidewall of the midsole. So that's a problem. That means you need a new pair of shoes. So I'm not sure, and you can tell it's like starting to happen on this one too, on the outside. I'm disappointed because I was hoping that I could probably use these for more hikes, and maybe I can. I don't know. Depends on the hike, I suppose. Again, I can't necessarily fault the fabric because these shoes were wet every single day and night for over 100 miles and in extreme hiking conditions. I hiked for at least 10 hours a day. So honestly, I don't know that any product out there would be able to withstand that kind of situation where the fabric was constantly wet and you were constantly hiking and pushing that fabric to its limit every single day. This is still my go-to shoe. These, I think, are the best shoes out there for hiking, and I highly recommend them. I would still order them and get them because I think day hiking, backpacking, I'm not going to have any of those issues. So I hope that you found some of the information that I went over helpful, beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Would love for you to drop in all your feedback, your comments. If you have other gear that you think is better and why, throw it in the comments. Let's make this a community of education for each other. If you saw the way I packed my Hyperlite and you say, oh, hey, you could have put your stove here and your tent here and it might have been better, or you could have put all that stuff inside this way, I would love for you to drop that in the comments and share that information, because I think really what I'm trying to gain out of this video is to help people in their research for their thru hike on gear and how to pack it and what works and what doesn't work. So let's share all of our learnings and information together. Thank you so much. Happy hiking, and thank you for following Chasing Blazes. It makes me so happy to have you along for this journey.